Hello to all you wonderful people out there trying to make the world a better place. Welcome to the Dead Man Walking Podcast. I am your host, Repeatedly Dead Fred, author of the soon to be released memoir, The Summer I Died 20 Times, because that's what happened to me, and thus the nickname Repeatedly Dead Fred, because that's what I was. I'm thrilled to have Cheryl Ilov with us today, possibly the most dangerous podcaster in the world. If you look at her arsenal behind you, Cheryl is the author of The Reluctant Ninja, and she has a couple of stories about adversity that she'd like to share and getting through the adversity, which I think we can all learn from. So, Cheryl, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Fred, it is an honor to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's the least I could do after you had me on your fantastic podcast.
Well, you were a fantastic guest. That was a really, really fun episode.
Thank you. And this is going to be a really fun episode. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you became the Femininja, which is also like a fantastic name.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, oh my gosh, I think I'm really kind of a boring person, or at least I used to think that until certain things started to happen to me. And
Mhm.
the way I went through some of these experiences, yeah, I think that's kind of, I found this amazing sense of strength and power deep
Mhm.
inside of myself that I honestly did not know I had. And if I hadn't gone through a lot of these bumps in the road of life,
Mhm.
which were pretty bad, not quite as bad
Mhm.
as you. I never died, but thank goodness. There were times I came pretty close, and times I really wanted to. But if I hadn't gone through those experiences, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't
Mhm.
have two books already written. I wouldn't have a podcast. So, in spite of some of the obstacles and the challenges that we have in life, we can always come out on the other side. We can come out stronger, leaner, meaner, happier, whatever, once we get through these challenges. Going through them really sucks like a Hoover, but we do get to the other side. And I found my way of healing through several different, problems, physical problems, emotional problems. And my way might not be the same for other people, but what I really want to do is share some of my stories as well as the message that no matter what you're going through, there is always hope and there's always a path to healing and getting yourself back on track.
Yes, there is, and it's just so difficult for so many people to realize that the options they've been given might not be the only options out there. And
Right.
you have to keep in the fight or stay in the fight, as they say. So,
Absolutely. So I'm just going to give you the Reader's Digest version of, like one of the traumas that I went through.
okay.
When I was in my mid-30s, I was a chronic pain patient. In a matter of just a few months, what started out as a little bit of a twinge and discomfort in my low back spiraled out of control into a full-blown chronic pain syndrome. And I was a chronic pain patient for 2.5 years. Instead of doing all the things I love to do, going to Pilates, ballet class, working full time, going skiing, I was going to my physical therapy appointments, to my physician's appointments, to all
Mhm.
these tests. I had to cut back on my work schedule. I couldn't do the activities that I loved. And I mean, I was in incapacitating pain. It was
Mhm.
just unbearable. And I lived like that for 2.5 years. And finally, after 2.5 years, one of my physicians said that I would never be able to do my laundry and my grocery shopping all in the same day because the arthritis in my spine was so severe, I would end up being bedridden. And I looked at this person and I said, "You don't understand. I'm planning on going back to ballet class." And she laughed in my face and said, "You don't understand. You are a chronic pain patient. You will always be a chronic pain patient. You will never have the life that you had before. And, but
Mhm.
don't worry, we're here to take care of you." And
Mhm.
then she said, start applying for disability because you're going to need it. I went home, I hit rock bottom, and it took a few days until I had one of these epiphanies. And it was like, wait a minute, this is not the life that I signed up for. I
Mhm.
deserve better. And I've got to figure this out on my own, because obviously my medical team was not only not helping me, they were making me worse and keeping me in this spiral of
Mhm.
pain and spasm and you know, incapacitation, whatever. I don't know if that's really a word, but they were
It is
keeping me
now.
there. It is now. I know I have a reputation for making up words, and it's really fun.
Mhm.
So what I did was I fired my entire medical team, much to their chagrin, because of course I needed them, they thought. So I fired them. I stopped taking all the medications I was given. I stopped doing all the stupid exercises and stretches the PTs gave me. I can say that because I'm a PT now myself.
Mhm.
And I just taught myself how to move again, like we did when we were kids.
Mhm.
And the only thing I added was acupuncture. It took a long time. It took a lot of intention about what I was doing, paying attention to myself at the same time as I was trying to learn how to move without pain. But 9 months later, I was out of pain. I was stiff, I was out of shape, but at least I was out of pain and I could start to get my life back on track. So I ended up going back to physical therapy, back to school, got my master's degree in physical therapy, opened up my own practice, providing alternative methods of healing to my clients
Mhm.
so they could find their own path to health and healing.
So, do those small knives behind you play any part in your PT practice? You don't slice and dice
No,
your clients?
no, and I think when I opened my practice, that was before I became a ninja, or
Okay.
pursued the life of a ninja. So I would have been horrified if you would have told me back then that I would be sitting here talking to you and having all of those wonderful tools behind me, because that's just not me, or at least it
Mhm.
wasn't at the time.
Yeah. Um, I think people don't understand that there's so many invisible disabilities out there, and probably
Mhm,
the number one is pain.
mhm,
And people with arthritis, my dad had horrible rheumatoid arthritis.
mm,
Um, and you just can't imagine the levels of pain they're sustaining. And it's just exhausting, and
mhm,
it eliminates any quality of life you could have.
mhm.
So,
Absolutely. But the funny thing was, obviously, I really did not have arthritis in my spine.
mhm,
Obviously, if you look at me now, I went back to ballet class. I, was dancing 6 days a week up until the pandemic.
mhm,
I ended up going, to doing martial arts and a lot of other really fun stuff that I was told I would never be able to function. So
mhm,
I think another message and a really important point I want to share with your audience is to be very, very careful about the labels that people put on you,
mhm,
especially the experts. Because I kept hearing that you're a chronic pain patient, you're a chronic pain patient. And as a medical person at the time myself, I was a respiratory therapist before I became a PT. I mean, I knew the medical model and I kept hearing this, and I had to listen to what they were telling me because they were the experts. Well,
mhm,
apparently the experts were wrong. And the experts, as you certainly know, Fred,
mhm.
often are. So when someone puts a label on you, don't accept it.
So, do you have a theory as to what was actually wrong with you?
I do, especially now since I do have the background in PT. I think what happened was I had maybe piriformis syndrome, which is a muscle in your, butt, and
Mhm,
basically it was in spasm, and it was compressing my sciatic nerve, and it was mimicking actually the pain that you would get from like a ruptured disc or from
mhm,
arthritis in your spine. And I think that I had several different muscle imbalances and imbalances in my spine that was throwing everything off. And once I started to address that with paying attention to my movement and my movement patterns, and with the help of the acupuncture, which is taking some of the inflammation down, I
sure.
think the two together is what helped just turn everything around. And then my stubbornness, of I'm not going to live like this, certainly
Mhm.
helped a lot too.
I find that amazing in a negative way because a slip disc or arthritis is something you can physically see. I mean, they could
Mhm.
just look on an x-ray and see that those things weren't there.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly, exactly. So they would see that. But if you took I was 36 at the time. If you took, like 136-year-olds and you x-rayed every part of their body, you would find quote unquote arthritic changes.
Hmm.
But those mild arthritic changes does not cause pain. So it was soft tissue. And you said it earlier, pain that you cannot see is the most debilitating type of pain I think there is, because after a while, the experts will start looking at you like, what's really going on here? Are you drug seeking? Is
Hmm.
there some deep, dark secret that some trauma in the past that you're not admitting to? Or, worst of all, you walk into the office and they're already rolling their eyes. I mean, that's just
Hmm.
so humiliating and so degrading
Hmm.
when to be marginalized like that by the people who are supposed to be helping you.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned is that if a doctor can't see it in a test,
Mhm.
it's not real to them.
Exactly.
If they can't,
Exactly.
see it in your blood or an X-ray or an MRI, it's not existing.
Mhm.
So,
I always would tell people it's like, if I would have walked into an office and said, my arm hurts, and it was obviously fractured, you have a little bit of bone fracture, hanging, sticking out
mhm,
of the skin, or blood spurting everywhere, you'd get the attention that you needed, and probably, a lot of sympathy along the way, like, oh my goodness, that
mhm,
must hurt. But, I've had several other pain conditions along the way over the years, and I learned how to shut up, keep my
mhm.
mouth shut, and not say anything and just deal with the pain, because I knew what I would go through if I tried to address it. Say from a medical standpoint, I think something's wrong here. It's like you just shut up and deal with it.
Mhm. I sometimes wish that I would run into some of those other doctors that misdiagnosed me, and I could just, you know, unload on them a little bit
Well, well,
and
maybe
hopefully
you should
save
spend,
someone else.
yes, and maybe you should spend some time with me, and I can teach you how to use some of those little tools behind me, and then give you a little bit more oomph to your words.
Oh, that would be awesome. I don't know if I mentioned this in our prior talk, but I have a neighbor who's like a 6th-degree black belt in kendo.
No, I
The
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I never
Yeah, well,
try.
take them along with you then for emphasis.
Yeah, I don't want to piss her off.
No, don't. No, nobody wants to piss me off either, and I don't know why. I really, just a
I
kind,
don't
sweet
know.
person. Just
You're
don't cross the line.
you're just a tiny little thing.
Yeah, I am.
So,
Helpless, harmless little middle-aged lady.
mhm. So, what do you think gave you the ability to suck it up and start going down this path of self-healing and self-discovery? Uh, it doesn't seem like a lot of people have that, although I think they have the potential for it. They just don't know how to access it.
I totally agree. I think that anybody could do it, but understanding how, I think what happened with me is that I did have to hit rock bottom before I could realize this is on me. I need to find a way. And I don't even know why. Well, I think because I did have a background at that time, a lot of Pilates. I'd studied a lot of Pilates, and of course, with a
Hmm.
dance background, and as a downhill skier. I mean, not a fantastic one. I mean, I used to
Hmm.
dance down the hill. I wasn't like a racer, um, but I knew enough about movement, and I had to slow myself down because I was in so much pain. So intuitively, I knew I was doing something wrong with my body. I was
Hmm.
using it in a way that was inefficient. And so that was causing the imbalances. I couldn't have articulated it like that back then, but
For
I just
sure.
intuitively knew that I was doing something. And if I could only reverse some of these things that I was doing, that maybe it would help eliminate the pain. And that's basically what happened. And I did end up going back to ballet class, like I said, and Pilates and all that type of thing, and skiing, and pain free. And even to this day, so that was 30 years ago. I'm 66 now, and I have no pain. People say, well, what do you do now when the pain comes back? And it doesn't, because if I
Hmm.
start to get little signals that my body, I know how to listen to it now. If it's like, okay, wait a minute, I'm either pushing myself too hard, or I'm doing something in a way that's not very efficient. So I need to kind of rethink this. And I just go back into that pattern of self-exploration, moving slowly, and just finding new ways of movement.
Sorry, I've got to go back to this. You're 66?
Yes, I am.
I had no idea. Absolutely
Oh,
no idea.
yep.
You are
Surprise.
the most youthful 66-year-old ninja I've ever seen.
Thank you. Well, I do believe that the martial art actually has anti-aging type of properties.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. You know, my sensei is 72. His mentor, his sensei is who's kind of my sensei as well. But thank God doesn't live in Denver, so I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
train with him very often. But he's 80 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain amount of vitality that you get from not only martial arts, but any type of somatic movement, mind body connection type of fusing the two together and integrating, you know, your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul in something that you're doing just gives you, it's almost like a B vitamin shot or the
Mm-hmm.
fountain of youth.
Yeah, I think anything you do that can dampen your inflammation,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I didn't know till I went through what I went through that there is a condition called body-wide inflammation. You know,
Wow.
you'd have an injury like from playing hockey or rugby and your elbow would hurt or your shin would hurt or whatever, but it was all localized. I didn't realize what I was part of what I was going through unconnected to my heart issue is that I just had inflammation throughout my body because
Mm-hmm.
it was so out of whack.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. And it's a slow burn. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, you wake up one morning and it's like, oh, you know, something's wrong with me that, you know, I did some one thing. But it's this slow progression of inflammation that becomes then systemic. But if you know at the beginning, well, this is happening, then you can do something to stop it or reverse it. But a lot of times we don't know until it kind of smacks us across the head like a two by
Mm-hmm.
four. And then it's like you can't move, you've got all this pain and all this dysfunction. And if you go to the doctor, they're like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. Here, have these pills and see
Mm-hmm.
if they work.
Yeah, and often they don't, they just mask.
Well, yeah. And then, of course, if you're lucky enough, like I was, then you start getting side effects from the medication that they're giving you. So then they want to give you more medication for the side effects. And then it's like, wait a minute, I'm not a chemistry set or a chemistry experiment. There's got to be a natural way to be able to
Mm-hmm.
do this. And there is. It's not fast. It takes a lot of effort. It takes commitment. But there are so many alternative ways of healing and finding, you know, ultimate health out there that really weren't as available to me 30 years ago when I was going through
Mm-hmm.
my chronic pain.
Mm-hmm. So do you work with people just one-on-one or do you work with them virtually as well?
I do. I work with them virtually, one-on-one. I did have my physical office and I closed that in May of 2017
Mm-hmm.
after 18 years of being in private practice. And then I relaunched it online about a year or so, a year and a half ago. So I do work with people, you know, online one-on-one. I do teach group classes in person here in Denver, and it's somatic movement. So, and sometimes people will just hire me to do workshops. And so I do that too.
Oh, very cool. So why don't we take this moment to give you a shameless plug? And if people want to get hold of you, how do they get hold of you?
You can go to my website. It is CherylIlov.com. And remember, there is no E on the end of I love. Everybody puts it there just out of habit. I even do it myself sometimes. So you go to CherylIlov.com and you can just message me there. You can also, if you sign up for my newsletter, you have access to 3 pre-recorded audio files of, I call it meditation through movement. It's really
Mhm.
mindful movement. It's the somatic movement that I teach to my clients as well as in the classes that I teach. So you can download those 3 audio files. And so you can get an idea of what mindful movement is like. And then if you have any questions, please let me know. If you don't like the newsletter, you just unsubscribe, no big deal, but you still have those 3 audio files. And you can find me on all social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook
Mhm.
page and that type of thing.
Okay. Um, do you do anything with breath work by chance?
Breathing is all part of everything that I'm doing. So yeah, I don't really do breath work individually, but it's part of the somatic movement programs that I do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Breathing
I'm
is real important.
Yeah, I've learned that, having
Yes.
gone through episodes of non-breathing. But I'm also reading a fair bit that we don't really know how to breathe. I'm
Mm,
learning that there are so many things we just assume
hmm
we should know how to do, and communication, and how to study, and how to acquire skills, and all these
hmm
things we just assume that people figure this out on their own, and that
hmm
figuring it out is part of the process. But apparently most of us don't breathe properly either.
And that's just so crazy because, it's a natural function we don't think about. But our breathing gets kind of out of whack from stress, anxiety. I was amazing at holding my breath. I mean, I could hold my breath like you wouldn't believe. That's
Mm-hmm.
not really good. So it's really interesting. And it's so funny because people would ask me, especially, with a background in respiratory therapy, hey, what's the right way to breathe? And because I'm snarky, I would start out by saying, well, in and out is a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But just to be aware of your breathing, of when you're holding your breath. And I don't know if you've found this book. The title is Breath. Have you
Okay.
ever heard of it?
I don't think so.
It's an amazing book. My sensei actually told me about it, and he was going on and on one day about this book, Breath, and talking about breathing. And he's trying to explain things to me, and I'm just nodding my head. And he says, "Oh, you probably already know all this stuff." And I says, "Well, yes, I do." But then he started telling me a little bit more about the book, and I thought, well, this sounds fascinating. So I ended up buying the book and reading it. And it is so amazing because the author does an incredible job of explaining the mechanisms of breathing, the physiology of breathing. And he's doing it in a way that, anybody, the layperson, can understand. And he also makes it fascinating because he interweaves stories
Mm-hmm.
in the book. So it's a fun read as well as you're learning a lot. But I highly recommend that book. I think I learned a lot from it. Like I said, I'm a respiratory therapist, but you can always learn more.
I saw a video of, do you know the Gracie family? They're the founders, maybe not the founders, but very prominent in jujitsu. And
Yeah, I've heard of them, but yeah.
uh, one of the Gracie family was on an interview, and he was talking about how important breath control is to staying in the fight. And
hmm
he showed one little technique, and I was like, "Come on, that can't possibly work." And it was just like, when you start to find yourself getting out of breath, you go like four or five, six little times, and then just one big blowout, and your breath normalizes. And I was
hmm
on a bike ride, and I was sucking wind, and I said, "Why
hmm
not?" And it
hmm
worked.
hmm
It
hmm
worked.
I believe that's in the book as well. There were a lot of techniques that were in the book that I thought, I don't know if I wanted to try that. His
Mm-hmm.
big thing too is, no mouth breathing. It should all be through the nose until you get to
Mm-hmm.
the point where you can't. And then, you do it just like you did, the few, and then it does normalize again. And they did explain why it happened, but it was recently. I was hiking with my husband. We were up in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
and I was starting to, I realized I was going into my old pattern. I was huffing and puffing. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute. So I slowed myself down and just started doing the nose breathing. And all of a sudden, it's like I had a lot more energy and I wasn't short of breath and I was able to just keep on going.
Yeah, it's like there's a circuit breaker in your body
Mm-hmm.
that just
Mm-hmm.
resets,
Mm-hmm.
and it's quite amazing.
It is amazing. And it's amazing what it does as well. If you do have anxiety, is the
Mm-hmm.
breathing can really just kind of like flip that switch and, then you're in a peaceful place.
Mm-hmm. So if somebody's going through chronic pain like you were, and they're not getting answers from their supposed
Mm-hmm.
medical team,
Mm-hmm.
um, do you have some recommendations of alternate ways they can start to explore? Firstly, reading your book,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you know, and how do they cut through all the negative energy they're going to hear from everybody else?
That is probably the hardest part. So thank you for bringing that up, because everybody is an expert. All of your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, of course, the medical professionals, everybody's an expert and they're going to have the right answer for you.
Hmm.
And what you have to figure out, you have to be your own expert. You know yourself better than anybody else does. You know what your
Hmm.
goals are, your dreams are, your lifestyle. And so you just have to turn off all that negative noise and really look within yourself and start doing your research. There are so many healing modalities out there. There's cranial sacral therapy, which is incredibly gentle and healing. Of course, there's massage. Everybody knows that. There's the Alexander technique. There's the Feldenkrais technique, which is what I do, the Feldenkrais method, along with PT. Acupuncture to me is the bomb. I just love
Hmm.
it. But there are so many different reflexology, and I know I'm leaving some out,
Yeah.
even like hypnotherapy. I've had a couple of hypnotherapists on my show. But the point is to keep an open mind and to never stop researching and to never stop experimenting until you find the one thing that works for you. If you try acupuncture and you've gone 3 or 4 times and you don't feel a difference, okay, that might not be for you, and that's okay. But there is always something out there that is really going to help you. And when people say, oh no, that acupuncture, that's just voodoo, don't listen to them.
It might be voodoo for you, but it's not voodoo for everyone.
Right, right.
Our bodies are very smart. They have all what I've learned through my heart condition is that your body has redundancy after redundancy after redundancy built in.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to find the right redundancy that's
Mm-hmm.
going to work for you.
Exactly. And it's a process, and it's easy to get discouraged, but you have to remember too that even a tiny little bit of progress is something you didn't have the day before.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm not a jerk. I don't journal. To me,
Hmm.
journaling is one more thing I have to
Hmm.
do. But I do like keeping a calendar of like, okay, I did this today and I felt great. I did this today and that didn't work out. And to keep, I had acupuncture and I felt better. Those little things. So you can, when you're feeling like you're having a setback, you can go back and look at that and go, uh-huh. I am getting better, because we have a tendency to look at the end result of I want to be completely pain free and be able to do everything I want. But it's
Hmm.
baby steps. When I first started, feeling better, and it was like, it's time to go back to ballet class. So I went to ballet class and I said to the instructor, ignore me. I'm going to be in the corner at the bar, the ballet bar, just to
Hmm.
clarify. I'm going to be at the bar and I'm
Either
going to
one works
do,
for me.
well, at that point, both of them would have been much better. So I'm just going to do my own thing. Leave me alone and let me. And
Hmm.
of course, everybody was afraid that I'd get hurt. So, I did as much as I could. I was very mindful, moving slowly. And after 20 minutes, an hour and a half class, I was like, I am done. So I just grabbed, my stuff and I walked out of the room, and all of the other dancers were looking at me with, oh, such pity and sympathy. And I'm like, you don't understand. I am victorious.
Hmm.
I was able to even just get myself to class, stand at the bar, do a few things, and I knew when I was done, rather than try and push myself through and then exacerbate, my injury or the pain syndrome. So
Hmm.
it's that type of mindfulness and that type of tunnel vision on yourself and tuning everybody else out. And it's a skill like everything else, and you get a lot better at it as you do it.
Hmm. In the intermittent fasting world, we call those non-scale victories. And
Ooh.
because everybody initially thinks of intermittent fasting like a traditional diet, it's all about the weight loss, but it's all about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
As Jen Stevens calls it, the health plan with the side benefit of weight loss. And so it's things like, oh, I can get on the ground and play with the grandkids. I couldn't do that 6 months ago.
Right.
You know, I can do up my seatbelt, or I don't have to move the steering wheel in my car to get in and out. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just dozens of these non-scale victories that
Mm-hmm.
we have to give ourselves credit for.
Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely huge. It's enormous and it is so empowering. And, it's just that little tiny bit of encouragement. that you
Mhm.
need. And that's why it's so important to pay attention to those small victories, because they add up. And that one small little victory leads to another one and another one and another one. And
Mhm.
then you can just, tell everybody else just to stuff it.
Mhm.
All those
And
naysayers and the negative Nellies. It's like, you don't know me,
mhm. And
and
they
you don't
still
know
might
what I
not give
need.
you credit.
Of course not.
And who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just flip them
And
off.
you might have to cut them out of your life. I had my very best and dearest friend of 30 years that I actually had to, we had to part ways. And it's really interesting, because how do you tell somebody you've been best and dearest friends with for 30 years that you haven't liked them for the past 15, and you've been trying to figure out how to break up with them for the past 10? It was awkward, but I did it. And when I did, it was like a 50-pound weight was lifted off of my shoulders.
I think you've just created a new reality TV show,
What's that?
The Long-Term Breakup, where you're breaking
Mm.
up with these people after so many years.
Yeah, I actually did a blog post. Breaking up is hard to do, or not.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Well, Cheryl, if you don't have anything else you want to add at the moment, I think we're running out of time.
Okay.
So I'd like to transition into the Dead Man Walking quiz. And I'm going to ask you for a number from 1 to 36, and we'll see where it takes us.
14.
Oh, this is so perfect for you. Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or, sorry, this is too funny, 100 duck-sized horses?
The first one.
A horse-sized duck?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to give us a rationale for that? Either of these is hilarious.
At least when I defeat the duck, I have dinner for a very long time.
Mhm.
I can take the duck and fill my freezer with it.
Are you a fan of duck?
Not really,
Oh.
but I'm a huge fan of horses. I love horses, and I would never,
Mhm.
but yeah. And,
Okay.
hey, in this economy, you never know. Food is hard to come by. So, and it's very expensive. So it'd be free food.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen these survival packs being marketed all over the internet. So we're
Hmm.
running out of food, but we have food to sell you for when you run out of food.
Yeah. Wow. That's just incredible. What marketing geniuses, really. Let's
Mhm.
scare you to death, and then we'll sell you this product and you'll be fine.
Okay. So Cheryl, thank you so much for being on, and I hope we get a chance to chat again. And if you want to give people just a reminder of where to find you, um, I will wrap it up.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's
My
always a
pleasure.
pleasure to talk to you. I love seeing you and I love talking to you. And just go to CherylIlov.com. You can reach me through that, through my website. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can just send me an email, info@CherylIlov.com, if you have any questions, or if you need a little bit of rah, if you're going through something very painful and you need a little bit of guidance, just let me know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. If you want to do all the cool kid things like, subscribe, share, what else? Did I leave anything out?
Subscribe. Did you subscribe?
Subscribe. Yes, I did.
Leave a review.
Leave a review. You're such a vet at this. See, I learned so much from you. Anything you can do, point people towards Cheryl. She's fantastic. And have yourself a great week. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next episode.